When you go to any airport in the United States today, you are not protected by the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. In other words, they can do anything they want to you out there, and there's nowhere you can seek redress.
Does the government exist to work for us, or do we exist to serve the government? I want you to ask that question, especially when you go to the airport. An airport in the land of the free and the home of the brave, and try to get on a plane. The country is turning upside down. This sounds more like East Germany in the 1960s than what one would hope for in America today. Is that what we pay the government to do? This is what happens when the government breaks its own laws. It becomes a law unto itself. What people would allow their government to get away with this? What has become of our self-respect? What has become of our natural rights? Could you imagine Washington or Jefferson or even the big government-loving Roosevelts letting the feds pull down their pants? Is life so sweet and peace so dear that we will sacrifice personal dignity and bodily integrity at the command of an authoritarian government? What would happen if everyone opted out of the porn screeners? What would happen if the local police kicked the TSA out of our airports? What would happen if millions of Americans say to these thugs, hands off?
Right after 9/11, we jumped in to put security arrangements that would prevent that happening again. And as life has gone on and those security measures have taken effect, a lot of them are no longer really needed.
Thousands of travelers have complained that some of these screenings can become abusive, even X-rated.
For arguing with a TSA agent, this woman winds up being slammed to the floor. She's filed a lawsuit.
I kept begging them over and over again, get off of me, get off of me, get off of me, and they wouldn't stop.
Here in Chicago, we watched as passengers like this man are subjected to exhaustive security checks. He's patted down, his wheelchair is examined, and his hands are swabbed, all in public view, in a see-through room at the security checkpoint. And he's not alone.
It's humiliation.
The average citizen, if they did in public what the TSA agents do, would be arrested, probably put in prison for molestation and battery. So a society is in deep danger if there are two sets of codes, one for the government and one for the people. And there's nothing more symbolic of the deterioration of the respect for liberty than you find at the TSA.
Tom Sawyer calls it absolutely humiliating.
My nightmare came true.
Sawyer is a bladder cancer survivor and uses a urostomy bag to collect urine. After the scanner detected his bag, he was ordered to undergo the pat-down.
Two TSA agents came over and said, we need to pat you down. Well, I just figured out in my mind, I know why.
Sawyer asked to have the pat down in private after explaining his medical condition. He says the agent was so rough, the cap on the bag came off and spilled urine all over his clothes.
No apology. No recognition that, is that urine? No nothing. No offer to help me.
Sawyer didn't have time to change and boarded the plane to Orlando soaked in urine.
I think what the government is doing is a violation of the Constitution and a violation of human dignity. Think about the millions of Americans who have pacemakers, artificial knees, artificial hips. They have no choice. They cannot subject these devices in their bodies to the radiation, so they have to go through the pat-down.
I've had to completely take my pants off and show them like my entire leg before.
As a baby, Angone was diagnosed with cancer. Her parents, Chicago police officers, had to have her leg amputated. She always warns TSA security agents that her prosthetic leg will set off the metal detector, but many insist on doing an embarrassing full-body pat-down.
Then I feel like I'm being felt up in public.
What's the reason for all the feeling up? The groping at the back of the neck, the chest, underneath the bra, all the groping on her body, her buttocks.
We asked the TSA those questions, but got no answers.
The key word here is reasonable, and they've gone off the track. They're not reasonable.
Mikey Hicks' family says he's been treated like a terror suspect every time he flies. The airlines say he's on a TSA watch list, even though Mikey is just 8 years old.
The security checkpoint between terminals D and E at Philadelphia International Airport is a busy place. Thousands, including lots of kids, pass through here every day. And look who we found as one of the supervisors here. This is Thomas Harkins. Until 2002, he was a Catholic priest working at churches across South Jersey. But the Diocese of Camden removed him from ministry because it found he sexually abused 2 young girls, with one assault even occurring in his bedroom in the rectory. We asked Harkins if the traveling public should be worried.
No, they shouldn't be.
The public should not be worried with you in a position like this, given your past.
So I have nothing to say.
A local TSA agent heading to trial. He was indicted on theft charges after investigators say he stole some big-ticket items from checked luggage.
Cash, jewelry, electronics, and other valuables are being stolen from passengers' baggage at a staggering rate.
What we've seen out there is that really anything that isn't nailed down is being stolen. For that matter, I would question someday if there wasn't a tires missing from an aircraft.
The investigation turned on a bungled drug shipment that led to an arrest and information that TSA screeners were taking bribes to let parcels of cocaine, meth, and marijuana through security. The indictment says shipments were set up through meetings and cell phone communications for bribes up to $2,400, a lot of money for TSA screeners. Earlier this month, the TSA agent was accused of stealing 8 iPads from luggage at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. In February, a screener at New York's John F. Kennedy Airport was charged with stealing $5,000 in cash from a passenger's jacket on the conveyor. And last June, a TSA employee was charged with theft of $30,000 worth of items from suitcases.
If people are taking money to let drugs through, they might as well potentially let explosives through, or people through, or anything for that matter. This is betrayal, this is treason, this is against the whole fabric of what the agency is about and the people are about.
Taking advantage of the general public's ignorance of their rights in the legally ambiguous airport screening areas, and the 21st century American citizenry's newfound penchant for prostrating themselves before anyone with a badge and a uniform, the TSA began turning the relatively benign process of clearing airport security into an ordeal that traumatizes and humiliates virtually everyone who has to endure it. The TSA quickly began positioning itself as the most totalitarian agency in the entire complex of the American security establishment. And that is no small feat.
Let me give you my card, okay?
Absolutely humiliating. I don't know why they would do that.
I understand. They shouldn't do that to anybody.
Nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government that could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
USA Today reports that in the 2 years before the attacks on September the 11th, NORAD conducted exercises using hijacked airliners as weapons.
Pentagon planners also envisioned the attack on the Pentagon 5 months before it happened. According to this April 2001 Pentagon email, Air Force officials wanted a war game, having a terrorist group hijack a commercial airline and fly it into the Pentagon. The idea was to check response times to launch fighter jets. But according to the Pentagon email, the plan was ultimately rejected by senior Pentagon officials as too unrealistic.
Hi, Boston Center, Team U. We have a problem here. We have a hijacked aircraft headed towards New York, and we need you guys to, someone to scramble some F-16s or something up there to help us out. Is this real world or exercise? No, this is not an exercise, no.
Holy shit! Holy shit!
The entire building has just collapsed as if a demolition team set off. When you see the old demolitions of these old buildings, it folded down on itself and it is not there anymore.
That should be it.
It has completely collapsed.
The whole side has collapsed?
The whole building has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed?
The building has collapsed.
That's the southern tower you're talking about?
Exactly. The second building that we witnessed the airplane enter had been, the top half had been as if a demolition team set off. When you see the old demolitions of these old buildings, it folded down on itself and it is not there anymore.
19 men armed with box cutters, directed by a man on dialysis in a cave fortress halfway around the world, using a satellite phone and a laptop, directed the most sophisticated penetration of the most heavily defended airspace in the world, overpowering the passengers and the military combat-trained pilots on 4 commercial aircraft before flying those planes wildly off course for over an hour without being molested by a single fighter interceptor. These 19 hijackers managed to knock down 3 buildings with 2 planes in New York, while in Washington, a pilot who couldn't handle a single-engine Cessna was able to fly a 757 in an 8,000-foot descending 270-degree corkscrew turn to come exactly level with the ground, hitting the Pentagon in the budget analyst office where DoD staffers were working on the mystery of the $2.3 trillion that Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld had announced missing from the Pentagon's coffers in a press conference the day before, on September 10th, 2001.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
Created in the wake of 9/11 under the pretext of fixing the system that had somehow allowed 19 men with box cutters to supposedly commit the most egregious violation of American airspace in history, aided in no small part by the simultaneous failure of the entire American intelligence establishment and the most sophisticated air defense in the world. The TSA was originally placed under the Department of Transportation and tasked with securing the nation's transportation system from future attacks. It was just a matter of months, however, before the TSA was transitioned into the newly created Department of Fatherland Security and began turning the relatively benign process of clearing airport security into an ordeal that traumatizes and humiliates virtually everyone who has to endure it. Taking advantage of the general public's ignorance of their rights in the legally ambiguous airport screening areas and the 21st century American citizenry's newfound penchant for prostrating themselves before anyone with a badge and a uniform, the TSA quickly began positioning itself as the most totalitarian agency in the entire complex of the American security establishment. And that is no small feat.